Hello and welcome to Housing Joint Ventures Financial Foundation Program Workshop number 4. In this workshop, we'll be discussing retirement and wealth preservation. I'm Rochelle Delia, co-founder of Housing Joint Venture. As a reminder, this presentation should not be interpreted as accounting, investment, legal, or tax advice. This isn't an offer to sell or solicit to buy any security or insurance product. It's purely for educational purposes only, and is part of our financial literacy campaign to build financial awareness and education for investors. So here's what we're going to learn in this workshop. If you have a workbook, please do follow along. As a reminder, you can see the pages associated with where we are in the workbook, either in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner. First up, here's what we're going to learn in this class. We're going to discuss fixed, indexed, and variable annuities, the differences in retirement plans and IRAs, income. We're going to cover Medicare, long-term care, and estate planning. So, first question, what sources of income will you have for retirement? We're going to talk about understanding the key differences among fixed, indexed, and variable annuities, as well as how IRAs and retirement plans work. We're going to understand what is my plan or your plan for long-term care. Does Medicare cover all your costs? And finally, that estate planning is not only for the wealthy. Here's the good news. Most people are going to live longer. The American life expectancy at age 65 will be age 86.6 for men and 88.8 for women. So that's looking good for us ladies. The bad news is that most people are not saving enough for their retirement. So we might live longer, but we want to make sure we have enough funds so that that lifestyle can be maintained. The reality is retirement has less to do with age 65. It really has to do with how much money you've saved. If you have plenty of money, you don't have to wait to age 65. We hear about this all the time with billionaires who've hit it big and decided to retire at age 30. Too bad I'm over age 30 already. So here are our sources of retirement income. Typically, these are sourced for people age 65 and older. As you can see from this pie chart, the majority of people take the most of their earnings from Social Security. That accounts for 38% of their income, whereas their earnings allocate for about 30% of their income. Income from assets is about 10%, and then pensions, IRAs, 401ks, and annuities bring up about 18.4%, and other sources of income rounded out at about 2.8%. So the real question is, what sources of income will you have when you retire? What will Social Security look like when you retire? Will it be there at all? How much can you rely on your pension, if you have one at all, IRAs, 401ks, and annuities? Do you have any other savings? Will you have to borrow from your home equity, or will you have to work much longer into old age? You know, a lot of people are having to work past age 65 to age 68 or even age 70. What are your sources of income? If you have a copy of the workbook, write it down on page 68. If not, write it down on a sheet of paper just so that you have it down in a reliable location. The truth, there's a retirement crisis. The great 401k experiment has failed for many Americans. We know that this number is 18,433. That's the median amount in 401k savings account, according to a report by the Employee Benefits Research Institute. Almost 40% of employees have less than $10,000, even as the proportion of companies offering alternatives like defined benefit pensions, this amount continues to drop. That's sad. 18 grand is not enough money to retire on. In truth, you need about $1 million to retire. Do you remember the 10-20 formula that we discussed in workshop 2? As a rule of thumb, you need to have 10 times your current income for retirement. So that means if your current income is $60,000 per year, how much would you need to retire according to this 10-20 rule? Well, it's simple. At $60,000 times 20, that means you need $1.2 million. Really, we need to think about self-security as opposed to social security. As a next step, use your income to calculate what your need is, and of course you can find that at the bottom of page 63. Again, if you don't have a workbook, it's no problem at all. Just take your annual income and multiply it by 20, and that gives you a rule of thumb of about how much money you're going to need when it comes time for you to retire, if you were to retire with a big lump sum. So when we're talking about saving for retirement, you have to think about what buckets do you have and what buckets do you know about. So we have IRAs, Roth and traditional, pension plans, stocks and bonds, annuities. If you own a home, home equity, as well as 401ks, 403bs, or 457s. These are all the same type. It just depends on the tax code associated to how you work. So if you work for a publicly traded company, then you might have a 401k. If you work for a nonprofit, then you have a 403b, or the government in some way. Same thing with 457. Social Security and savings. These all round out your sources of income that you can have for retirement. And let's not forget any personal businesses that you choose to keep into retirement, as well as any other income producing assets. So these are things that include rental property or rental real estate. Just want to pause for a moment to have a discussion between traditional and Roth IRAs. Okay. So we're going to compare these two as it relates to the tax deduction on contributions, the required minimum distributions, you may hear this known as RMDs, as well as earnings. Okay, so here we go. In a traditional IRA, you do get tax deductions on your contributions. However, income limits do apply if you have access to a work plan. In a Roth IRA, you do not get tax deductions on your contributions. So remember that conversation we had in workshop 2 about the seed versus the harvest? So in a traditional IRA, you are taxed on the harvest versus a Roth IRA, you're taxed on the seed. So that means anything you contribute to a Roth IRA, you do not get a deduction, but in a traditional IRA, you do. In terms of required minimum distributions, this means that in the case of a traditional IRA, by the time you reach age 70 and a half, you will be required to take distributions from your IRA. What does that mean? Whether you want to take the money or not, whether you need the money or not, the government is going to force you to take the money out. That means they're going to force you to pay taxes on it. And that happens at age 70 and a half. A Roth IRA does not have RMDs. Again, on the earnings, the traditional IRA is taxed upon the withdrawal. Again, that's like being taxed on the harvest. Versus a Roth IRA, you're never taxed again unless you withdraw early. So it's really about tax deferred in the course of a traditional IRA versus tax advantaged, meaning that you've already paid taxes on your seed and the harvest is completely tax-free. So there are two types of retirement plans when we're saving for retirement. There's one that's called a defined benefit plan, and the next is called a defined contribution plan. So here we go. A defined benefit plan is essentially a traditional pension. So this is where you know how much money you're going to get, and that benefit that comes to you is defined. However, what is known as a defined contribution plan means that the only thing you have control of is how much money you put in or contribute to that plan. This is in the case of 401ks, 403bs, and 457 plans. A defined benefit plan is paid by the employer. Again, it's a pension. So the employer is the one that defines how much money you get from them after you retire. However, the reason why we don't see those very much anymore is because defined benefit plans are very costly for the employer. And again, you will receive a set payout, otherwise known as a defined benefit. A defined contribution, however, is paid by the employee. Again, you have to determine how much money you're going to contribute to that account every month or every year. Excuse me. Some employers do choose to match. However, the amount is defined by your, i.e. the employee's, investment. Here's about qualified plans. So, in the case of a 401k, in short, this is a retirement savings plan that is sponsored by an employer. A 403b is similar to a 401k, but it's available to employees of tax-exempt organizations. So these are people that work for things like schools, hospitals, or religious organizations. There's also what's known as a 457B. Again, this is a qualified plan that is available to government employees, so state and local public employees, as well as certain nonprofit organizations. But they all are treated similarly as it relates to the tax code because they're all qualified plans. So what does that mean? It allows you to contribute as an employer salary deduction. Here are the advantages of these kinds of qualified plans. First off, you have tax advantages. You have tax deferred earnings on the deposits that you make with pre-tax dollars. Again, you pay taxes on the harvest, not on the seed. So anything you put into these plans, if it's a traditional plan, is tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes before you contribute. That's why they call it pre-tax dollars. Another advantage is that it's an auto deduction. The deposits are deducted from your paycheck. This is a common form of dollar cost averaging, which we discussed also in a previous workshop. You may also have a matching contribution, which means that the employer matches a certain percentage of the worker's pay that they choose to contribute to the account. And finally, you have portability. So you can move the money when you leave your job. This is known as what is a rollover IRA. So even if you left your job, any contributions you put into that 401k, it's still yours. You can just roll it over from that old employer to the new employer's plan, or even to your own private account. There are also retirement plans available to small businesses and small business owners. First one we're going to discuss is called a simple IRA. A simple IRA is for small businesses and self-employed individuals. Employers are required to match a contribution with employees. You have up to a $12,000 500 worker contribution and a $3,000 catch-up. The catch-up is for older adults, typically over the age 50, that want to contribute even more to the account because they're closer to retirement. There's also a plan known as a SEP IRA. This can be funded by either a self-employed individual or an employer. However, an employee cannot contribute, as well as the employee does not pay tax until they withdraw the funds. Both a simple and a SEP IRA are both simple and low cost to set up. Finally, we'll discuss a KEO plan. A KEO plan has higher contributions and it can accept up to $53,000 a year. However, it is more difficult to administer these types of plans. So let's discuss the qualified plan contributions, the different account types, and how it works. So as of 2014, and these numbers did change, right? But from 2014 to 2015, the IRA contribution was $5,500 with a $1,000 catch-up. 401ks, however, those contribution limits do tend to increase annually. And from 2014 to 2015, it went from $17,500 to $18,000 with a catch-up amount of $5,500 or $6,000. So that saw a total increase of 2.9%. The total contribution to 401ks or 403bs, including the employer amount, the maximum was $52,000 in 2014 and $53,000 in 2015, which allocates to just under a 2% increase. SEP IRA increased $500 to $12,500, and then finally a SEP IRA, again, is now at $53,000. Again, this is another increase of about 1.9%. So this just gives you a rough rule of thumb of the type of increases we've seen in the past and may give you some hints about how the increases may occur in the future. So when you're looking at a rollover chart, when you roll over from a previous plan to a new plan, they have to be like kind, meaning that you have to roll over from the same kind of account that you had to a similar type of account. You can refer to the chart on the screen to determine if you can roll over from on the left-hand column or the types of accounts you can roll over from, and on the upper row, are the types of accounts you can roll over to. Rollover IRAs. So there are a couple of benefits of rolling over a previous employer's IRA. The first up is that you continue to receive that tax deferral. So you did not pay taxes on the seed, and those Any gains you receive continue to be tax deferred as long as they remain in that qualified account. You also have an increase in investment options from rolling it over from that employer to either your private IRA or to a new employer. You can potentially have lower fees, and it's simpler, particularly when you roll it over to your own personal private IRA. Ultimately, it allows you to control your money, which at the end of the day is the most important benefit. We're going to switch gears just a little bit and discuss an annuity. An annuity can be known as a reverse bet. If you remember, we discussed that life insurance is for in the event that you die too soon, your family gets a big death benefit payout. However, there are some living benefits associated with it in the forms of that cash value account. In an annuity, however, you will win with the long-term payout from an insurance company. So it's kind of like I almost am betting that I'll live too long and live beyond my money, and an annuity will be a better payout for me. So an annuity with a lifetime income payout option from an annuity, this is a good solution who live a long life or who worry that they may run out of money. So whereas life insurance is for what if I pass away too soon, an annuity is for what if I live longer than the amount of money that I've saved. In general, there are 3 types of annuities. There is fixed, indexed, and variable. The types of annuities that you should select depend on your investment choices. Here they are. In a fixed annuity, it's exactly what it sounds. It guarantees a fixed rate of return. An indexed annuity, the returns are credited by a market index. One example of that is the S&P 500. A variable annuity, however, the returns depend on the performance of investment choices and or the portfolios that those annuity funds are deposited in. So again, you have fixed, indexed, and variable. So fixed gives you a fixed rate of return, index gives you an index rate of return, so like the S&P 500, and then variable is, well, variable. If you remember from the life insurance conversation, this is very similar to traditional whole life that gives you guarantees, an index universal life policy where the cash value is indexed to an account, and a variable universal life policy where that cash value was essentially in the stock market, and so those investment returns were based on stock market performance. Similar type of thing, but in this case, this is annuity instead of life insurance. So annuities have a couple of different phases, and so this will help you understand a little bit better. So annuities begin by you saying, hey, I want to open this account. So you have what is known as the accumulation phase. Traditionally, you have after-tax dollars, and there's no limit on how much money you can put in an annuity. There's no limit on your contributions. And the amount of money you put into this annuity is allowed to grow tax deferred. So you pay taxes on the seed, you can put in as much as you want, and it grows tax deferred. After the accumulation phase, you have what is known as a distribution phase. This is where you get to live on the money. You can do this in a number of different ways. You can take a big lump sum and cash out. You can have lifetime income, which means I want to get paid for as long as I live. You can have period certain, which means no matter how long I live, I want to have a certain amount of years of income. And then you can, if you do pass away prematurely, then you can give it to someone else. So those periods can be 5, 10, 20, 30 years. There is lifetime income with period certain, meaning I want it for my life, but I want to make sure that I get at least this amount. So let's say you choose a 20-year period and you pass away in year 15. It's okay because your family would still get 5 more years of income based on the period certain portion that you selected. And then we have joint and survivor, which means I'm going to do it to 2 people. And then whenever the first one passes away, person number 2 that is still living gets to carry out the remaining portion of that distribution phase. So remember, annuities are taxed as ordinary income when you're withdrawing on your gains. And the 59.5 age rule applies. So you can't withdraw your money before you're age 59.5. And there are normal surrender charges, and that tends to be between 5 and 7 years. So be aware of longer periods that may affect withdrawals, especially near retirement age. So one thing to note is like with those big fancy basketball players or football players that get a huge amount of money, typically it's not a lump sum. Typically it's an annuity that they will be able to get for their life. So it has a certain amount of accumulation phase and then distribution. So annuities have what we call as premature withdrawal taxation. So that means if you draw the money before it matures, then you're going to get taxed on it. So what does that mean? That means you get a 10% penalty if you withdraw funds from an annuity before age 59 and a half. So something to be aware of. And the IRS assumes that earnings, as opposed to your principal, is withdrawn first. So that means whatever gains you have, they're going to assume that you're taking that out as opposed to your original amount of money you put in. The withdrawn money pays taxes, again, as ordinary income. So when you're doing your taxes, let's say, at the end of the year, and you earned $60,000, and you withdrew $10,000 from an annuity, then they're going to say, hey, your actual income was $70,000, your original $60 plus this additional $10, and so now you have to pay taxes on that full $70 because we're going to count it as if it's income as opposed to investment. So here we go. So let's say your annuity grows $10,000 after you buy it, and you decide to withdraw $5,000 of that $10,000. If you're in a 25% tax bracket, then you're going to pay a 10% penalty on that $5,000 or $500. And you pay a 25% tax on that $5,000, which you're paid regardless, which is $1,250. So your total tax and penalty is $1,750 on that $5,000 that you chose to withdraw. You really don't want to withdraw early. So here we go. There are some advantages of what we call a 401k rollover annuity. So it's kind of combining the two. So here's what you get. You get principal guarantee. So you're going to roll over your 401k, and then you say, I want to turn my 401k into an income stream for the rest of my life. That way I don't have to do this kind of dog and pony trying to figure out how much money I can afford to take out. So what does this give you? It gives you guaranteed principal. So I have flexibility. That means I have the potential to change investment options to suit my goals. As well as I have income protection. So I have peace of mind in case I live too long, which is actually quite nice. I have death benefit protection as well. So essentially, here's how it works. You give a large sum of money to the insurance company in exchange for a series of payments. Long and short, that's what an annuity is. Okay? In the form of an immediate annuity, that series of payments starts pretty well immediately. Now, the monthly check is determined by the size of the account, interest rates, and your life expectancy. So, for example, if I decided to get an annuity today and I'm in my early 30s, then my payments would be pretty low because they have to pay me for a pretty long time. However, if you start an annuity when you're a little bit closer to retirement age, let's say age 65 or something like that, then your check can be a lot higher because your life expectancy, to be honest, is lower, right? You're closer to the end. Regardless, you receive it for life. Or if you don't want that, you can choose other options. So we talked about those. That would be your period certain or your joint and survivor with your spouse. Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss what is known as long-term care, because there's a good chance that you're going to need it. In reality, 7 out of 10 people over age 65 require some form of long-term care services. And 4 out of 10 people that do receive long-term care services are actually less than age 65. Their age is 18 to 64. So even if you're not necessarily close to retirement, long-term care is something that we all need to think about because it's going to hit about 40% of the population anyway. So what is long-term care exactly? Well, long-term care, or LTC, is the help you need when you're not able to do some of the basic activities of daily living. So essentially, it pays when you can't do certain items like bathing yourself, dressing yourself, eating by yourself, toileting, right? Going to the bathroom, as well as moving in and out of bed, or what's known as transferring. So if you can't do those things on your own without anybody helping you, then you would be eligible for what we call long-term care assistance. So long-term care is often associated with older people. But, the reality is accidents and illnesses happen at any age. So there are people that have a stroke, a chronic illness, or even Alzheimer's disease. Those aren't necessarily related to how old you are. And the problem with long-term care is not just the fact that you need help with those activities. It's that it can take a toll on both your savings and your assets because it's very expensive. So we're going to run through different types of care and then how much they cost. So let's say that you just want a home health aide to pop in and out of your house as needed. That's going to cost about $21 per hour. Annually, this can be $30,000 or more. And of course, we have inflation, right? So things will increase. In terms of homemaker services, so this will be people that do light cleanup, do a little bit of light cooking, meal preparation, things like that. They cost about $19 an hour or just over $27,000 per year. If you were to go to assisted living facility, that costs $110 per day or approximately $40,000 a year. An adult daycare center, so let's say you're living with your children and they, need a little bit of help with you during the day, then that is $69 per day or $25,000 a year. And let's say that you were to go to a full-fledged nursing home and you had a semi-private room. Then those rates run $209 a day or about $76,285 per year. And then finally, if you want a private room, we're talking over $233 a day or $85,000. In general, there are some misconceptions about long-term care. When you're buying a life insurance policy with long-term care, is it possible that you may qualify for life insurance coverage but not long-term care? I don't know. In actuality, that's true. So it is very possible that you can qualify for life insurance coverage but not be healthy enough to qualify for long-term care. So the average cost of long-term care in the United States is $83,500. So the real question is, who's going to pay for it? And who's going to take care of you? Is your spouse going to do it? And can they afford to do it? In reality, there's a big risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. For people over age 65, 1 in 9 people develop Alzheimer's. And over age 85 is 1 in 3 people. So it's a real threat, right? So how about this question? If you have few assets and live on Social Security benefits, should you buy long-term care? Yes, you definitely should buy long-term care. Let's discuss Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care. So here's the truth. Medicare, which is like health insurance, right? Medicare normally covers short-term care up to 100 days. So that's just a little over 3 months. Medicaid covers long-term care, but it has very strict income and assets requirements. So the qualification rules do vary by state, but to put it briefly, you usually have to exhaust most of your assets first. We're talking down to $10,000 or something like that in order to qualify for Medicaid. Long-term care insurance, however, is coverage that you purchase to provide both medical and non-medical care services, again, when you're not able to perform those basic activities of daily living yourself. So Medicare, again, is your health insurance that kicks in after age 65 in the United States. And so unless you're still covered by your employer's health plan, you must enroll in Medicare before you get additional Medicare supplemental coverage. And here's where it gets a little tricky, right? Because Medicare has 4 parts. There is Medicare Part A. This is the medical insurance for hospital visits. And this part is free for most people, okay? There's also Medicare Part B. This is the medical insurance for doctor visits. This isn't free. So this is what's mostly like what you're used to paying for health insurance, right? So current monthly premiums in 2016 were about $121 per month for that medical insurance. That allows you to go see the doctor when you're sick. Now, that doesn't include drug coverage. So for drug coverage, you need Medicare Part D. D for drugs, right? And so Medicare Part D helps lower the cost of any prescription drugs that you may need. And then finally, we have Part C. So the reason why we go A, B, and D is because Part C is kind of like a combo of Part A and Part B. So essentially, you can buy Medicare Part C Advantage plan, and that'll cover you for both Part A and Part B. So both your doctor and your hospital visits, right? And then with a Part C plan, Part D, the drug coverage, is usually included as well. So if you get a Medicare Part C Advantage plan, you get pretty much all of it. So essentially, you apply for Medicare through Social Security. You have 2 enrollment periods to apply for Medicare Part A and Part B. There's an initial enrollment period that is about 7 months, and it starts 3 months before and lasts until 3 months after your birthday month. So, depending on when you're born, it starts at 3 months before you turn age 65, and you have until 3 months after your birthday to enroll. There's also a special enrollment period for people with employer coverage. You can do an initial sign up right away, just like we just talked about in this initial enrollment period, or within 8 months after your group coverage ends. So let's say that you work past age 65 and you're still on your employer's health insurance plans, then you can do what's known as a special enrollment plan and special enrollment period, as long as you do it within 8 months after you end that group coverage with your previous employer. And if all else fails, you can join in what is known as the general enrollment period. And this is between January 1st and March 31st of each year. If you do it late, then late enrollment penalties will be assessed to you. Remember, after signing up for Part A and Part B, you may still have to sign up for Part D, which is the drug coverage. Now let's talk about Medicare Supplement or Medigap insurance. So Medigap insurance or Medicare Supplement plans are insurance plans that you pay for to cover the gap. What that means is Medicare doesn't cover things like your deductibles, your copay, or coinsurance. So just how if you have health insurance in your employer, you have to pay your copays and stuff, they can be a little pricier when it comes to Medicare. So there's additional supplemental insurance that can cover the gap and bring down those costs associated with what would otherwise be your deductibles, your copays, and things like that. In reality, Medigap policies don't cover long-term care, and that will be things like stays in any nursing facilities, dental care, vision, hearing aids, eyeglasses, or any private duty nursing that you may need. The basic benefits for supplemental plans are standardized amongst all the plans. Therefore, if you buy a Plan F from Mutual of Omaha, or Blue Cross Blue Shield, or AARP, it doesn't really matter. The benefits are all the same. The only difference is the price. So here's just a summary of all the different types of Medicare plans that there are, right? So again, you can get Medigap insurance, as well as your Medicare Part A, B, and D, as well as F. Or C, which covers A, B, and mostly D. So not to confuse you, have a look at the chart on the screen to get an idea of what different Medicare supplemental plans or Medigap plans there are. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit to Medicare Part C, which is also known as Medicare Advantage. So if you remember, Medicare Part C is an alternative to original Medicare. So the insurer for Medicare Advantage, also known as Part C, it receives a per capita amount from Medicare to provide the benefits and services that are covered by Part A and Part B. And this usually includes prescription drug coverage, also known as Medicare Part D. So let's say if you want to go through an HMO like Kaiser Permanente, then you'll go to their participating doctor and hospital of their plan, their network. So in this case, you choose Medicare Advantage Part C because you'd go to the doctor that they choose that was in their network, a hospital that's in their network, and you get your prescriptions through them. So remember, Part A is for hospitals, B is for doctors, D is for drugs. So if you choose Medicare Supplement or Medigap insurance, then that means you go to the doctors and hospitals of your choice. If you choose to Medicare Advantage, however, then you have to go to doctors and hospitals in their network. Okay? So, obviously, because of freedom of choice, Medicare supplement costs more, whereas Medicare Advantage is typically less expensive or may come at no cost at all to you. So it's your life, and it's up to you to make the right choice for you. In truth, retiree healthcare costs are much more than you think. The average lifetime retirement healthcare premium cost for a hypothetical couple is $266,000, $589. So that's just a premium cost while they're in retirement, right? And that includes Medicare Part B and Part D coverage, as well as any supplemental insurance they may need. And this, of course, is assuming a life expectancy of 87 for men and 89 for women. So if we look at the cost projections for a 65-year-old couple, it's going to be pretty pricey, right? So if you add up all the annual costs from age 65 to roughly just over age 85, they're going to spend, again, over $250,000. So if we add that up to the future dollar costs, right? So what is that effective amount? They're effectively paying over $400,000 for their healthcare costs in retirement. And then, we didn't even include dental, vision, co-pays, and other out-of-pocket expenses. If you wrap all that into it, then those cost estimates rise from $266,000 to just under $400,000. So, in truth, retiree healthcare costs may be much more than you think. So let's start rethinking your house, right? So, hey, do you need the same amount of space, right? Consider moving to a new or smaller place because that may offer some advantages, particularly in retirement. For one, it's easier to upkeep a smaller space. You have lower maintenance costs. You can look for an area that has lower property values and lower income taxes. You can look for a place closer to your doctors. And then really, equity that comes from downsizing can be put aside to savings for retirement. And hey, you might even want to go somewhere with better weather. Okay. We're going to transition one more time towards estate planning. So we've talked about Medicare and Medicaid. We've talked about long-term care plans. And we talked about downsizing our homes. Now, let's revisit the conversation on estate planning. So estate planning is the process of determining the distribution of your assets upon your death, right? So no one doesn't really want to talk about this, but it is very important, right? Estate planning also covers the management of your professional affairs in the event of incapacity. So let's say that you have a business and something happens to you where you're still alive, but you're not able to actively act as the main principal of your business, then estate planning could help you with those as well. In truth, estate planning is all about wealth preservation. And why? Because everybody has an estate, no matter what, if you think you do or not. Here's why. Your estate is everything that you own minus your debts. So that includes your car, your home, any other real estate that you own, including bank accounts, savings, CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, retirement and pensions plans. Again, businesses, whether you're a sole proprietor, corporation, LLC, or partnership, as well as any other personal possessions, and even furniture. Therefore, everybody needs to have an estate plan. It's not just for the wealthy. So here's an estate planning worksheet to help you kind of work through some of these things. To ensure that your property will go to who you choose when you die, you can make a simple will. To avoid the probate process, you can consider what is known as a trust. If I would not want my family to have to try and make decisions for me. So in that case, I can fill out an advance directives. And I can also give authority to a trusted person to manage my accounts and my finances if I'm unable to. And I can do this by signing what's known as a power of attorney. To protect my children, I will need to name a legal guardian. Item number 6. If I want to make sure all my investment accounts will go to the person I specify, then I can register and frequently update my beneficiaries. To protect my children, their education, and cover my debt, I will evaluate to make sure I have the proper amount of life insurance. If my total estate is over $1 million, then I may be subject to estate taxes. And so that depends on the current tax code, right? And I can even direct a portion of my life insurance proceeds to go for my final expenses. So that is funeral costs and things like that. And to ensure that my final expenses are handled according to my wishes, I will keep this instruction in a safe place along with my other important documents and my will. If I own a business, I need to have a succession plan. If I have a partner in the business, I need a buyout agreement. All my important documents, including trusts, wills, agreements, insurance, debt, retirement, investment accounts, and any certificates of deposits or annuities, these all need to be kept together in a safe place. So here's a tip. If you didn't know, you can have all your important documents stored in a digital format. Therefore, you have easier access to it, especially when you're traveling. Did you know, if you leave your assets to a child and the child is a minor, that the court will appoint a guardian that will take care of the assets as well as the child? Did you know that the child will get an inheritance, will get all the inheritance when he or she reaches legal age, i.e. age 18? If you don't have a plan, the government has one for you, and you may not like that one. So it's best that you make your own. Also, if you have children and are remarried and you pass away, then your assets will go to your current spouse as opposed to your children. Their serving step-parent, right, the current spouse, has no obligation to support the deceased spouse's biological children. You have a responsibility to plan ahead, right? And the best time to start an estate plan is now. Life is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, right? Let's talk about some things when you travel. Here's what you should have: a power of attorney, healthcare directives, your last will and testament, as well as a child travel consent or a child medical consent if you travel with a minor, particularly if you're not the parent of that child or if you share joint custody with the other parent. Hey, you want to have it just in case. You never know. Why are we telling you all this? Ultimately, it's about peace of mind, right? If you have a plan in place, one that has instructions and one that will protect your family, it will give you some peace of mind. Promise you that. This is one of the most thoughtful and considerate things you can do for yourself and for your loved ones. It's already a stressful time when you lose a loved one, and the last thing you want to do is really to have to make even more decisions. So if you can do some of that for them so they don't have to think about it, trust me, they will thank you. Okay. So when it comes to saving for your future, are you worried about your future? And are you ready to take charge of your future? One of the greatest miracles in life is that you can change your life simply by changing the way that you think. If you think you can be successful and you struggle towards your goal, you'll probably still achieve it. Here's the truth. Life is hard, but it presents wonderful possibilities. If you believe in your future, you can become financially independent. You just have to have a plan of action. First off, increase your cash flow. Make more money when you can and while you can. Have multiple sources of income. And you can consider doing that in the financial industry. You got to spend less and save more. What does that mean? That means rebalancing your budget and getting more in savings. You got to reduce your debt and your liabilities. The truth is you can be debt-free. Just got to understand how money works because you can become your own money manager. Believe in your future. You have to have a clear financial goal. That means building a solid financial foundation, which you've already begun by taking this course. So congratulations. And have a life with purpose. We all want a life with meaning so we can build a legacy. You got to embrace change and expect to succeed. So what does that mean? We got to change our habits, right? So we can't do the same thing as we've always been doing and expecting a different result. That's called insanity, right? You have to expect to win. You got to get up and get out. Nothing's going to happen sitting on your couch twiddling your thumbs. You have to build the world and see the world. And don't forget to have some fun, right? Find something you believe in and dedicate your life to work for it. All right. If you haven't already sat down, sit down with that workbook or take a look on your retirement planning sheet and make sure you're on track towards your retirement goals. Evaluate your needs for healthcare during retirement and determine what plan will be best for you. When was the last time you updated your wills or any trust that you may have? If you have the Saving Your Future book, be sure to read pages 48 through 50 and 68 to 86. And think about who are 3 to 5 people that could benefit from this training, because we'd love to have them in the housing joint venture community. And commit to introduce one person per week, right? We hope you enjoyed this training and that you found it super duper valuable. Head over to the forums and let's chat about what you learned.